With the Robbie Williams biopic coming out, I think that we've all been reminded of just how much of a titan of success he really is. Record-breaking concert sales, mountains of music industry awards, critical acclaim, and over 75 million albums sold. These achievements speak for themselves. Unless if you're American like me and you're wondering who this dollar store Morrissey really is. Or, I guess he's British, so he's Poundland Morrissey. This is not a serious country. Like seriously, how does someone who has 15 million monthly listeners on Spotify essentially have zero recognition in the biggest music market on the planet? Well, in this video, we're going to go over the top 3 reasons why Robbie never broke America. Number 1, Robbie is terminally English. Now, you may be chafing at that remark. You know, you're thinking about all the great contributions of British culture to American culture, you know, the Beatles, Monty Python, James Bond, and you would be absolutely correct. However, if you do that, you may be missing the actual level of cultural knowledge that your average American has about the greater UK. For many American, if you add the royal family to that list, that may just be their full comprehension of like what happens over in merry old England. We kind of receive just a very specific like importation of a broader British culture, specifically a very sanitized and elite version of it. And one of the big things that of course gets left out is working class culture. Like the average American may just understand like every British person to be like a scientist or like in some way directly connected to the royal family. Like that's like for a lot of people over here, I'm just going to be honest, that's the only way that we see you people. So in general, anyone who doesn't enter into one of those neat little boxes that we have kind of feels a bit uncanny valley-like. And Robbie Williams just kind of falls into that category of things that just don't culturally translate. Every British person who talks about why Robbie didn't make it big in America always brings up that he's really like a cabaret act, and he's pulling a lot from these performers who would go to like holiday camps or working men's clubs or social clubs and doing a very kind of vaudeville, music hall, end of pier shtick. I'm saying all these things and I have no idea what any of them mean. I'm just saying that this is what British people say, and I have no comprehension of it because I am American. And I'm not being facetious with that statement. I'm saying that these are literally just like alien concepts to the American brain. We do not have any cultural equivalent over here of these things. Like when Robbie is doing his pastiches of James Bond in the Millennium music video, yeah, we're understanding that like, yes, this is James Bond. We've seen those movies, but also a lot of people would honestly look at that and be like, why is he looking like that? His kind of British sense of humor and like the smug kind of way that like he carries himself is just one of those things where it's like, we just don't quite get it over here. And there's also this catch-22 of like, yes, we don't understand his cultural references, but also we don't really understand why is he famous? Because we don't have any comprehension of like, yes, he was in a boy band. There was this infrastructure of like, this is why this guy is important. And the type of music that Robbie makes, which is kind of this middle of the road kind of pop music, doesn't really kind of make sense in the American musical charts without some kind of context. If Robbie Williams had like won American Idol, it would make complete sense. No one would question this whatsoever. But because we don't know who this guy is, it doesn't make sense. But even this in isolation is ignoring what possibly could be the most important element, which is number 2, Robbie may just have no desire to actually get famous in the United States. Now, this truly may just seem unfathomable, particularly to Americans. But the specific circumstances that, you know, Mr. Williams was in the 90s, it begins to make a little bit more sense. So Robbie has mentioned countless times that he felt a lot of pressure and constraints from being in this super famous boy band, Take That. And that reflected itself in him, you know, acting out and, you know, constantly doing drugs and, you know, all the tabloid things that he would become famous for. Like, just imagine you're in this situation, like where you literally cannot walk down the street without being harassed by paparazzi or deranged fan. The trappings of fame weighing heavy on your shoulders, just taking you down as a human, just this shell of a person. And then someone tells you, hey, there is a place where you can have all of the money that you have received from this fame and nobody knows you. You can live like a king in complete anonymity. In what world is there motivation to ruin that by getting famous there? I mean, it's not as if the boy wasn't famous enough. He's literally having record-breaking concert sales and selling millions of albums all around the world and everywhere that isn't named United States of America. And from what it seems like, he is just fully bought into that, because this allows him to actually have the one thing that so many celebrities crave: an actual work-life balance. And more importantly, work-life separation. He can just, have the country that he lives in and then commute to work in all of the other countries that he's famous in. So on top of this very cushy setup, there's also the added issue of how hard it would be to actually break America for Robbie Williams. The United States is massive. It is hard for people from the United States to break the United States. And for Robbie, who is, world famous around the world except for in America, it would be incredibly humbling to come to a place where no one cares who you are and you have to fight and scratch and claw your way up to some level of fame against the biggest stars in the world. And it also wouldn't necessarily be an even playing ground, which brings up my next point. Number 3, American tastes have just consistently not lined up with Robbie's development of music. Boy has just had an uncanny ability to be what we did not want whenever he was doing it. Where his entire musical career, he's just been going against the trends in America. In the early 90s, whenever we were into grunge and alternative music, Robbie was doing boy band stuff. When American trends did begin to head towards boy band stuff in the late 90s, he was doing this kind of mature pop sound, which we were definitely not going to be interested in for about another 5 years. He was just never in the right place at the right time for the American market. And also, he was kind of redundant for us. The closest American translation for Robbie Williams is Justin Timberlake. He was famous in a boy band, and then afterwards he went solo and started doing the R&B infused pop music. So when we already have Justin Timberlake, why do we need Robbie Williams? And the answer is, we don't. And what most people would say Robbie's main genre of music is rock adjacent, middle of the road pop music, which is just fundamentally not something that Americans generally like. So whenever he was making the majority of his biggest hits, he was just kind of not enough pop or not enough rock to really be claimed by either side. He was not going to be going on after Creed on the butt rock stations, and he also just kind of wasn't pop enough for him to really compete with the Backstreet Boys. And to juxtapose that, the anti-Robbie Williams is Bush. And yes, Bush is a British band, believe it or not. Whereas Robbie never quite fit into the musical trends of the time that were going on in America, Bush was scientifically designed to precisely sound exactly what grunge sounded like. And thus, they have the opposite problem, where they are huge in America, but hardly anyone knows them in Britain. So we have this situation where most Americans would know Glycerine, but most British people would not. And most British people would know Angels, and most Americans wouldn't. It's this complete, mirror image. Oasis was barely able to overcome this cultural barrier, and that's on the full strength of Noel's songwriting, and also them fully embracing all of the rock stereotypes that we are just familiar with. And that was just something that was nearly impossible for Robbie to do. Essentially every niche that he could possibly fit into over here, there was just already a much more dominant established artist there. Specifically at the time that he was really trying to break America, it was either you were the brightest and shiniest pop musician of all time, or you were Korn and Limp Bizkit, and he was neither. We cannot allow our pop musicians to have a smug attitude. It goes against our American spirit. And so I think that this led to a situation where neither party really wanted the other, and so they agreed to disagree agreeably. However, will this situation be changing with this CGI monkey movie? Who knows? Maybe Robbie Williams mania is coming stateside. Maybe, but in the meantime, watch this video.